Everybody, my name is Ethan. I'm an aspiring comic book creator on the incredible journey to try to pull a comic book right out of my brain and get it onto paper to share with the world and hopefully get it out to you guys so that you can see and enjoy it. This week, I wanted to show you a time-lapse video of the front cover of the book 1 of my comic book, and I was hoping to explain some of my processes, some of my inspirations, and all that juicy, good information. So this video will be a little bit longer than the last videos, and be sure to stay until the end for a bit of news and information on today's sponsorship. But before we get into all of that, let's check out this time-lapse. So here we see the initial sketch of the layout of the comic book title. You see that I wanted to have two prominent figures in the forefront. You have what at first actually was going to be Jesse, the main character of the story, with Maxwell. Well, Maxwell is sort of hypnotizing him. However, I changed it in my head to where it's not actually Jesse on the front cover with Maxwell. It's one of his side character friends who I have yet to entirely write in the backstory for, but he is going to be abducted by Maxwell, and he's going to be one of the first introductions of the idea of people going missing. And I haven't written an entire character sheet for this guy, but I have some ideas working around for him. I want him to be, as you can sort of see in the cover, kind of not so bright farm kind of boy who's very easily manipulated by Maxwell, and then Maxwell's going to be sort of the person that takes over and takes advantage of his situation, which is going to be written into the story at some point. In the first book, I've still, like I said, kind of started working on that idea, but you can see he's wearing sort of patchy clothes. He's got the suspenders. Whenever I do my sketches, I always do a really rough sketch at the beginning and then do a more broad, more clean line work kind of sketch towards the end of it. So you can see I'm adding in all the fine details on his pants, adding in the arms, his more broad line work on his arms there. And you see I'm really bad at drawing hands, so honestly I tried to find a way to hide his hands as best as I could. I put his one arm behind his back with the other hand so I could only have to draw one hand. And so it's a little tip. I recommend probably not hiding and avoiding drawing hands. I recommend taking control of that and figuring out how to draw hands before you draw and write a comic book, but I was not in that mind frame at the moment, so I just decided to draw one hand, and now I am glad to say I've gotten a little bit better at drawing people's hands. You might be able to see some of that go through in the later pages of the comic book that I've been uploading on my Instagram recently, but I don't know, that's sort of hearsay at this point. So we see I got the basic outline of what Jesse's friend is going to be looking like. I tried to add some fine extra textures onto his hair, onto his pants, onto his arms and legs. And at that point, I decided, okay, let's start drawing Maxwell. Now, Maxwell is one of my favorite character designs that I have ever put on paper. This was actually the first time that I drew him out fully. And at first I wanted to give him these big, scary looking teeth with a brain inside of his little helmet there. His body sort of stayed the same, but you see I changed his teeth. I made his teeth a lot smaller because somebody told me when I showed him to a coworker of mine, he mentioned to me that, well, he looks kind of scary. Aren't you trying to make him a little bit more friendly? And that's the idea behind Maxwell. He's always trying to be the big bad villain of his story, but he's never quite intimidating enough and evil enough to sort of lay a groundwork of being a supervillain. So I think that goes through with the way I changed his teeth. I made him a lot less menacing looking. A lot of the inspirations for Maxwell is old, like 50s era aliens, like Mars Attacks. That was one of the inspirations for his character design, but it's very different. So Maxwell is what's known as a ferret person from another intergalactic planet, and so he sort of is skeevy, rat-like. He's manipulating the situation a lot, but he's also not smart. He's one of the the less intelligent characters in my story, which I really wanted to go through with the character design. I think he looks a little bit more goofy, and I want his character to be more oriented to a goofy kind of character rather than something really intimidating, which is going to be transferred over to another character design that I have started and pretty much finished mapping out a character sheet for, but I'm not going to show you that character's character sheet because it would be a spoiler in the first book. And so you can see here too, I started laying out the background. So I got Maxwell and the character that Maxwell is abducting in the forefront of the image, and you see I start adding in finer details on this UFO in the background that's going to sort of swoop in and abduct the main character's friend. And I added the lights, I added all of these tiny little circles, which whenever people see the front cover, they ask me, how long did it take you to add in all of those circles? And honestly, it probably took a maximum of 3 hours of just drawing circles over and over and over and over again, and then probably another hour of coloring them, which you'll see later on in this time lapse, the coloring of everything, which actually surprisingly goes by quicker than the sketching. I'm not sure. I guess that's because I don't do initial sketches of the coloring of my works. I just sort of go into coloring, and I can make changes a lot quicker with colors than I can with line work. So you can see in the background there another person getting abducted by another spaceship. The idea about these ferret people is that they conduct experiments. There's many of them, and they work for a higher being who's that character that I said I have a character sheet for. They're all working for him and abducting people and sort of causing havoc and anarchy, but not in the way that I think you might expect. These ferret people are they're trying so hard to be very scary bad guys, but they're always falling short. They're always fumbling up their plans and making these mistakes, and they're always going to be goofy kind of mistakes. So that's going to be translated through in the comic book, and you're going to be able to see that as well. My idea with Maxwell, too, that I didn't initially come up with was the idea of having him be a mailman. Not actually sure what the inspiration behind the mailman business that he runs is, but I kind of like the idea of this goofy little alien guy who's really trying to be the arch-villain of his story, but his job is a mailman delivering mail to people. He's a postal worker. And I guess it sort of centers back to the idea of like Newman from Seinfeld. He was the mailman, and because of him being a mailman, he was evil. Something on those lines, I guess. That probably was the bigger inspiration to that. And so here you can also see the very great amount of detail that I was putting into not only the characters, but also the background. That's something that I really want to translate into this comic book, is the idea that each panel and each image that you can see in it is sort of a piece of art from me that I can be proud of. I don't want to have lazy art in my comic book, which, I mean, I'm going to go back through all of it towards the end and revamp everything, make sure everything is up to par with at least this front cover. I think the front cover needs to be the bar that I'm placing, that I need to make sure all of my art is on par or better than the front cover. And so you'll see that translated through here with all of the details that I'm putting into the background. You can see the grass, each individual little blade of grass and detailing there. I am copying and pasting in other places. Some people, whenever they see me copy and paste things, they say, oh, that's cheating, but is it cheating to use an eraser to erase something, or is it just using a tool at your disposal? That's the big question there. I think it's just using a tool, so I don't really consider it cheating. It sort of lays out and makes everything look more full, and it saves me time too, because as you can see, this time lapse here, even though it's only 15 minutes long, it's kind of sped up. I think overall, in fact, I could tell you overall, how long it took. I'm running into the background here, so my voice might be a little bit quieter. But I can tell you how long this piece of art took to be made. And when, time-lapse, sorry, I'm just opening it up here. It took approximately 14 hours and 15 minutes. Altogether, that's 14 hours and 15 minutes of work, not 14 hours and 15 minutes of me drawing, going and getting food, coming back and drawing again. That's 14 hours straight drawing. I didn't do it all at once, but altogether it took 14 hours to design this book cover. And you can see I'm adding those circles again. Those circles are I think they look really cool. I really like adding them into my art pieces. They're sort of different. One time I took a pen and I drew circles like that all over up my arm. It looked really cool. I think that might have been the first time I drew a bunch of circles like that. And so now I kind of put it in a lot of my artwork. You'll see it a lot in this comic book, that sort of design. I just think it's cool. I think it's neat. It's like I don't know. It's different. It's a different kind of design. Somebody once told me that I put not enough, or I draw too many straight lines, and so that was sort of my way of coming back at them, drawing a bunch of circles. So now we're getting into the coloring, and coloring is a lot different than line work. You'll see that I'm filling in a lot of what I can using a tool that allows me to just fill in different sections of the art. I got the base colors down for our characters and the grass in the background, and then I started filling in all of those tiny circles, and you'll see it is a lot of circles. I was thinking one time about going in and counting exactly how many circles there was in this comic book cover, and I tried, and then it got overwhelming and I stopped trying. So who knows how many circles there are. There's definitely a lot of them though. And so you'll see I'm getting all of the base colors down. The base colors sort of lay the groundwork for everything. And I don't add shading or lighting until after everything on at least one section is colored out. And I sort of went crazy with the filling in the circles. You'll see there's so many. There's a lot. But that's all right. It makes the comic book cover look a lot cooler. And so with Maxwell too, another character trait that I'm adding into it is you see the bubbles in his helmet are sort of matching the bubbles overlapping the main character's buddy's face. Those bubbles have something to do with hypnotizing people and overcoming and taking over their senses. I haven't really written in the science behind it, but there's some sort of mind control going on with him when it comes to those circles going over his face. They're sort of manipulating his brain and telling him what to think and distracting him while Maxwell's buddy there in the spaceship is swooping in behind, getting ready to abduct them. So now we start adding the colors of the UFO. More base colors, grays, blues, greens, stuff like that. I add the lights. There's a cool lighting effect I did with the glass of the light bulbs, where I took one layer and I made it darker, or I made it less opaque than the other layer over. I overlapped it and then added details underneath it. And then I took a light pen, actually, which you'll see here momentarily after I do the shading, which kind of took a while, actually. It was a little bit more complicated than I was bargaining for with the weird shapes that I put on the character's clothing. I wasn't really accounting for how the shading would look on that, but I added some of the lighting and some of the shading onto Maxwell here. I just take one layer above and I multiply the colors, and it comes out looking like really nice high quality shadows. It makes it darker colors of the hair, darker colors of the skin, and by doing so it kind of takes away the blandness of using like a muted black that I used to do for my shading. When I multiply the colors, it always comes out a little bit nicer. And then you can see I add highlights for the lighting around the different shapes and some more fine details on top as well. You see the light pen that I'm using here for the lighting, and then I changed, adding the title here, I sort of warped it. I wrote it all out right here. I knew this title was going to be Strange Encounters Issue 1, and I warped the title, and you can see there's the final product right there. There's that. That's the time-lapse. There's the time-lapse for Strange Encounters Book 1. Right now I have written a grand total of 3 pages into that book out of I don't know how many yet, but I'm closing in on getting started at least. It's like I've said 1,000 times, it's going to take a long time to get even this first book finished. But that's one of the big reasons that I wanted to make this YouTube channel, was so that I can share that progress and hopefully inspire other people who are wanting to make a story and share it with the world, and that's what I'm trying to do here. So that was the first cover, the first book. I'm not sure how many books there's going to be, at least 4. I have in my brain at least 4 right now, but there could be more. There probably will be more. And when there is more, there will be more time lapses and more stuff for me to share with you guys. So that was the time lapse. The one last thing that I wanted to mention to you guys was I'm trying to work on a rebranding of my Instagram and my Facebook. I'm thinking about going with the name Ethan Hibbard Presents, but I'm still not entirely sure if that's what I'm going to go with. I have changed one of my logos. That one might get changed again. I'm just settling with it for now. You may have seen it already. I'm not sure. I'm going to leave my YouTube video, or my YouTube channel image is me in front of my art like I have it set right now. But if you have any ideas for this rebranding, do let me know, because I'm still open for making some changes to things and working things around. And let me know if you like the idea of Ethan Hibbard Presents. I'm not sure if that's what I'm going to go with, but I could use some input for certain. And as with all of my videos, my links are in the description to my Instagram, my Facebook, my Twitter, which I'm not super used to using still, but it's in there. So if you want to check it out, please feel free to do so. In today's video, I just want to send out a huge shout out to ScuffStation Gaming for partnering with me and my channel. SSG is an esports organization that competes and creates content in a whole variety of different games and content. If you want to join, feel free to check it out. The links are going to be in the description with my other links into today's video. And feel free to check that out. It's pretty cool.